Hey everyone, Chris and Jason here with the Private Lenders Podcast. Now, before we get started, just one quick announcement. We have recently moved the mastermind group over to a new platform that allows for free accounts, free members. So you can go to hardmoneymastermind.com, sign up for a free account, like I said, and check out all kinds of cool content, interact with other members. And then there's also additional stuff if you want to go to the next level. Okay, so today we are talking about the multiple income streams that are built into one loan. The fees that happen at the time of closing, the income that comes during the life of a loan, and there could be stuff on the back end too. And there could be additional fees earned at the time of payoff. And what happens is once you get to having a number of loans or 10 or a dozen or several loans outstanding, it just seems to start coming from everywhere. Some loans are closing, some loans are making monthly payments, some loans are paying off, and the fees are just coming from all different angles, which is probably our favorite part about this business, right? So we're going to break that all down now.
Yeah, so I mean, ideally, the goal of this business is to write good loans to good borrowers that are going to perform, right? That's what it is.
Absolutely.
You spend your active time working in order to find a good deal, underwrite it, close it, and it ends up being a little bit more passive after that, right? Obviously, you gotta service the loan and collect monthly payments and do construction draws and things like that. But for the most part, it shouldn't be that much of a headache. And in a perfect world, although you can make more money on defaulted loans, in a perfect world, you do want that loan to perform. It's good for you. It's easier for you. It's good for your investors. If you're lending out at 13 and 3, let's say it's out for a whole year, you're making 16% annualized, right? Obviously, you divvy that up between you and your investor, depending on what your split is. But it's a good, it's good income, right? It's a good rate of return. You're making the money on the front. You're making the money servicing. We have some miscellaneous fees, like we have a commitment fee, which is like a $9.95 fee. We make a little bit of rub on our inspections and our appraisal fee. It's not really an appraisal. We just call it an appraisal because that's kind of industry jargon, but valuation, whatever it is. So, there's a little bit more money to be made there. So mostly on performing loans, we're making the points, 3 points plus note rate minus 3. That's typically how we set it up. Everyone can choose to do theirs how they want. But for instance, if we do a $100,000 loan and we lend out at 13%, the capital investor is getting 10%. There's a 3% arbitrage. So that ends up being another $3,000 annualized, right? So just under $300 a month, $200 something dollars a month, $250 a month, whatever that comes out to. So if a deal performs perfectly, no hiccups, super clean, that's what it ends up with. And then obviously we make those miscellaneous fees, $9.95. We do a construction inspection that's $150, things like that.
Yep. Yeah. So just breaking down some of those as we go through the life of a loan. So like Jason was saying, I'm just going to reiterate some of that. So you have 3 points up front. So on a $200,000 loan, about averages $6,000. The $9.95 funding fee or commitment fee, we've changed the names a couple times over the years. That's basically just a, cover your overhead, cover your costs kind of transactional fee that's common in our sort of lending and in any kind of real estate lending. Then there's going to be some inspection fees because we're typically doing construction loans, not always, but many of them are. So you might have 4 inspections at $150 each. So anything else that would come? Yeah, I guess we have a little spread on the valuation fee, like you said, too, because we do have a full-time inspector that does that stuff. But the fees that we're collecting definitely totals up to a lot more than that person's salary. So there's a income stream there. And then, so during the life of a loan, it could be the servicing fee, which breaks down to pretty much 80-20, 80% to the investor and 20% to us. And when you have a bunch of loans outstanding, that adds up to a pretty good number. Or you could have some of the loan yourself, right? Like maybe the company funded some of the loan, or the owners of the company funded a portion or all of the loan. And then you're getting all 100% of that payment, right? Or maybe 50, right? Like just depending on what the setup is. But it really starts adding up. During the life of the loan, there could also be late fees that are common. And what do we do? 10% of the payment amount as a late fee if it's paid after the 5th of the month. And so there's definitely some of those each month. Those start adding up as well. Now, when we get towards the end of a loan, like we were saying before, well over 90% of our loans perform perfectly, and that's the way you want to have it. But you are going to have some stuff that happens, right? Like extensions, for example. That's not uncommon because we write 12-month loans typically, and not every deal pays off in that time. There could be a sale that's coming later on, or some refinance, or some other kind of event. But an extension fee, think about that like another origination fee. You might push it out another, 3 months for 2 points, 3 points for 6 months. Those are all pretty common. It might just be a month or two and you tack on a point or two, something like that, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that at all. I would definitely keep an eye on your maturity dates. I think it is easy to maybe to lose track of maturity dates a little bit, especially if a loan is performing. If they're making payments every month, it's like, it matured a few months ago. But I would stay on top of those. And depending on the client, you may or may not want to add a fee. For a really good client, you might get free extensions for sure. Like we do, definitely. Yeah. And then you have go ahead, jump in.
No, go ahead, keep going.
Okay. So then getting towards the end of the loan, extensions are possible. And then this is where you get some of those, that fall into that 10% of some kind of default situation, right? And there could be accrued interest that hasn't been paid for a while, which is going to come with late fees as well. And so you might have a windfall at the end of a loan on a deal that went some kind of sideways, right? Even if you defaulted or not, if you start any legal process or not, you might not even switch to default interest rate. It is common to have a 24% default interest in many markets, as we do. But you could keep note rate. You can do it either way, just depending on the situation. That's one of the reasons it's so important to have really tight control of your capitals, because you can make these decisions on the fly, day to day, loan to loan, situational type of stuff. But that turns into another income stream as well. When that accrued interest comes in and you get a big servicing fee and late fees and all that stuff. And so as you can imagine, it really does start coming from every angle. You have deals closing today, you have deals paying off today, you have monthly payments being made today, every day, pretty much. And once you get to a certain size, so you can see how it adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, and also going back to the default rate and default interest, typically if they're over 30 days in arrears, depending on how your notes are written, you can implement a default interest rate, and then default interest rate jumps the rate from 24%. And that may or may not seem excessive to for you or not. And some people will talk about they'll mention that, be like, well, the interest rate goes up a lot. Be like, well, you got to be incentivized to make your payment. We want them to make their payment. If they're not going to make their payment, there's got to be a repercussion, right, on that case. So industry standard, I would say, is about 24%. And when we do that, what is it? Our investors get 17 and we get 7. Is that what it comes out to?
Yes. Yeah. So the normal 80-20 split goes to about 70-30.
Gotcha.
Because
exactly.
There's more work involved in managing.
Exactly. There's more work. And keep in mind, like this episode is not necessarily about defaults. We've done some and we can continue to do more like that. But obviously there is a lot more work. We might have to front additional fees to attorneys on defaulted loans. We might have to step in and pay property taxes or insurance or violations, something like that. So there's obviously more risk and obviously a little bit kind of a more return by doing it that way. But you can get creative, right? You can figure out the best way to work for your situation. I will say that it's important to have good communication with your capital investors and probably be fair across the board. If you have a really good borrower who went over budget or something like that happened, and you want to give them 1 month free, not free at regular rate and no late fees or whatever, go for it. Feel free to. But I'll tell you that don't get taken advantage of and don't be a sucker, because early on that was kind of our mindset, and then next thing you know, it's 6 months, a year down the road, we're not getting payments. We haven't started the foreclosure because we were suckers and we believe that, hey, these guys are good for it, and really they're just trying to push and take advantage of us as much as they could. And I mean, you learn that very, very quickly. But you got to do right by your investors, by your company, of what makes the most sense. I mean, now, not that we have, not that we're like straight machines of like, this is exactly what we do, but we do have a process that we follow. And, if we're communicating with the borrower and everything's working well, we'll give them some sort of, reduced extension fee or something, because we want the borrowers to perform, right? Like, we're putting these additional fee structures in place for defaulted loans because they're more work, they're more potential risk. We want to put more pressure on the borrower to take it seriously, of like, listen, you're not just going to roll at normal interest rate for a few months until you figure it out. Like, it's going to be painful. Like, we want to get paid off,
right.
Let's be honest, money today is more valuable than money tomorrow. And if it's going to be money tomorrow, we want it to be more expensive. Another real quick thing to add, and, when you're a smaller lender, this is more appealing to you. As you get to be a bigger lender with more processes and, you just don't want as many headaches and you want to keep everything pretty standardized, it's a little harder. But early on, we got creative on deals, right? Like we did joint ventures with folks where we lend them money, we just get an interest rate return, and then we split the profits on the back end. We had different programs. So this person would be 13-3, this person would be 14-4, depending on their qualifications, things like that. Right now, everything's very, very standardized for us because it's very, very simple. We want to keep it simple. We could potentially be leaving money on the table, right, by not being more creative on some of these, but at the same time, peace of mind, and it's easier and it's more systemized. But there's nothing wrong with, as you get started, potentially, I don't know, charging more. Sometimes put fees on the front end, fees on the back end, right? Hey, instead of charging you 3 up front, I'll charge you 1 up front and 3 on the back, or something like that, or 4 on the back, whatever it is. So like, there's no rules. You can set it up the way that you see fit of what works best for you. I know one of the common things that a lot of borrowers want, and a lot of hard money lenders sometimes fall into the trap, is no payments until the end of the loan. We don't love that model. We've never liked that model. If you're going to do no payments, do it as like prepaid interest or rolled into the loan. So for instance, let's say it's a $100,000 loan. Do a $100,000 loan and make them prepay 3 months or 4 months ahead of time, because it's important, especially when you're starting and raising capital, to disperse funds to your private investor over and over. The sooner you can get funds back to your capital investor through monthly payments, through any type of money in their hand. You've heard our story of why we do weekly checks to investors and not monthly, because we want to stay in front of our investors all the time. The last thing you want to do is do your first loan with a new capital investor, and they don't get a payment for 6 months until the loan pays off, right? Like, you have no touches with them. Like, they're going to be wondering what's going on. You want to get them paid as quickly and as easily as possible. And even if it's prepaid interest, that's great. Nothing wrong with, doing a loan for $100,000 and then, has a few months of prepaid interest baked in, and then you give your investor a $6,000 check immediately. That's a good sign as well. So the point is, you can be creative. We've had some consulting clients that we've worked with, and sometimes I believe that it's super sophisticated and overly complicated the way that they structure some of these things. But a few points, and if you go over 3 months, and it's a 0.5 point extra per month plus your interest rate. But that's fine if that works for them, and they can scrape a little bit more money on the deal. More power to you.
Yeah, and that is more common with smaller operations, and especially people lending their own money, where they can just do like customized loan quotes for each deal, right? And there is an opportunity to earn a lot of profit that way by being creative or collecting on the back end, or just like timing it out based on how long it's outstanding is how much it's going to cost. Like, that whole thing is, we have too much going on for that. We have 220 loans out, something like that typically. So we can't be doing custom quotes and custom deals like that. It just wouldn't make any sense. But in a smaller operation, you absolutely could. But in either case, like, this is all really predicated on having control of your capital, whether it's yours or somewhere else's, and designing that system that you can work in. If it's being sent off to an institution of some kind, you're not going to have this flexibility. You're not going to have let me make a judgment call at the end of this loan term, right? You're not going to have that, and it's really going to hamstring you. So just one final word on that. And yeah, I think that's about it. But I mean, if you play your cards right, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about with the multiple income streams related to a hard money loan, especially when you have several of them outstanding. And just to wrap up, like I was saying before, check out hardmoneymastermind.com, create a free account, check out a whole bunch of content, interact with other people, say hello, introduce yourself, let people know exactly what you're up to in the world of private lending. And we hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Hard Money Mastermind.